Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going on an absolutely epic micro-heroes journey. We're going to follow our curious little traveler, a data entity we'll call Byte, to uncover exactly what happens behind the scenes when you type google.com and hit enter. It's something we take for granted literally every single day, but the mechanics behind it, well, they're just fascinating.
For you and me, we experience this as an instant flash, right? Just a quick tap of the enter key and boom, the page is there. But for our hero, Byte, typing that URL is a massive call to adventure. It triggers a wildly complex and vibrant journey across the internet filled with traffic cops, underground tunnels, and high-security checkpoints.
Act 1. The Call to Adventure. Let's dive into the first two steps of Byte's journey to find Google.
Step 1 kicks off right in your browser's temporary memory, which is called the cache. Before traveling anywhere across the globe, Byte simply checks if your browser already remembers Google's address. It asks one simple question. Hey, have we visited Google recently? If the browser already knows the location because you were just there, it skips the search completely. But if not, Byte has to figure out exactly where to go. And that brings us perfectly to step 2. You see, computers don't actually locate websites using human-readable names like google.com. Instead, they communicate using numerical addresses called IP addresses. Think of an IP address as the street address of a house on the internet. Byte has to translate our human destination into a machine-readable string of numbers.
So how does Byte get those numbers? By consulting the Domain Name System, or DNS. You can think of the DNS as the internet's massive global phone book. Byte asks the DNS, where does google.com live? The system quickly searches its vast directories and fires back the correct IP address. Now, with the exact coordinates in hand, Byte is finally ready to hit the road.
Act 2. Navigating the digital highway. We are officially leaving the comfort of the browser.
For step 3, Byte can't just lug this web request around as one giant heavy block. That wouldn't work at all. Instead, Byte meticulously packages the request into small, highly manageable pieces of data known as packets. Each little packet is stamped with critical information, where it came from, exactly where it's going, and what specific data it's asking for. They are completely prepped for the long road ahead.
Almost immediately, these packets run into their very first guide, your Wi-Fi router. The router acts kind of like a local traffic officer. It carefully examines the destination stamped on Byte's packets and actively directs them out toward your internet service provider, sending them straight into the wild, wide area network. And this brings us to step 4, where the real road trip begins. Byte is now traveling across the internet. We're talking underground fiber optic cables, old-school telephone networks, and even massive undersea cables connecting entirely different countries. At every single intersection, various routers are constantly calculating the next best path to take. The crazy part? Byte's packets don't even have to take the exact same route. They might travel through completely different networks before finally reuniting at Google.
Act 3. Securing the connection. Approaching Google's digital gates, Byte can't just walk right in.
Before exchanging any private information, Byte has to pass through a series of critical security checkpoints to establish a secure HTTPS connection. Yeah, that S stands for secure. First, Google hands over a digital certificate to prove it's the real deal. Your browser meticulously verifies this, checking the issuer, making sure it hasn't expired, and ensuring it hasn't been tampered with. Once everything checks out, they agree on encryption keys. These keys scramble all the exchange data, so if anyone tries to snoop on the traffic, all they get is unreadable garbage.
With a rock-solid, highly secure connection established, step 6 is where Byte finally delivers the HTTP request. This is basically Byte formally introducing itself, saying, "Hello, Google, please send me your homepage." Alongside this request, Byte shares important context, like what specific browser you're using, your preferred language, and what types of content your computer can actually display.
Act 4. Inside the data center. Byte has finally breached Google's massive infrastructure.
For step 7, keep in mind that Google doesn't just depend on one solitary computer. They operate thousands of powerful servers across data centers all around the world. So, Byte is first greeted by a system called a load balancer. Think of it as a super efficient receptionist. It quickly scans for a server that is completely available and directs Byte's traffic right there, ensuring no single server ever gets overwhelmed. Once directed to the chosen server, we hit step 8. The server processes the request and gathers the digital treasure for Byte to take back. This data payload includes HTML for the page structure, CSS for the shiny colors and layout, JavaScript for all the interactive behaviors, plus your images and icons. All of these files are then chopped back up into tiny data packets, ready for the frantic return journey.
Act 5, rebuilding the destination. Because fetching the data is really only half the journey.
For step 9, as Byte's packets arrive back home at your computer, your browser springs into action. First, it meticulously puts those arriving packets back into their correct order. Then, it reads the HTML to build the skeleton of the page. Next, it applies the CSS to make it look good. Finally, it layers on the JavaScript so you can actually interact with it. It perfectly combines all these elements to draw the Google logo, the search box, and the layout directly onto your screen. Looking at step 10, it really puts this entire timeline into perspective. What felt like one simple action to us actually involved browser caches, DNS phone books, physical routers, massive internet service providers, millions of data packets, HTTPS encryption, load balancers, and a really complex rebuilding process. All of these completely distinct technologies working together in absolute, perfect harmony.
But here is absolutely the most mind-blowing part of this entire explainer. This epic adventure for Byte, traveling across oceans, through undersea cables, navigating strict security checkpoints, gathering files, and sprinting all the way back to rebuild a functioning web page, happens in a fraction of a second. Literally less than 1 single second.
The internet feels so instant, doesn't it? But I want to leave you with this thought to ponder the next time you type google.com and hit enter. Will you ever look at a loading screen exactly the same way again, knowing the extraordinary, hyper-fast journey going on behind every single click? The digital world is vast, it is incredibly complex, and man, it is astonishingly fast.